million-mile garage. What we got a problem with our resident duster is, since we put this engine together new about 25 years ago, it's got one lifter that sticks, and it usually only does it if you shut the car off cold. Like if you start and move the car, if you get the car up to full operating temperature, it doesn't make the clickety-clack. So what we've decided to do is just replace the one bad lifter, although 25 years later. So what we're going to do is we're going to figure out which side of the engine is making the clack. We'll yank the rocker cover and see if we can find the loose rocker. Since we've been loading this car out for movie shoots, I'm a little concerned if they started up with a clacking. It only takes about 15 minutes for the clack to go away, and my hypothesis is the lifter sticking is probably just the plungers sticking inside the lifter bore, and then when it gets hot enough, the bore opens up and then it unsticks. So actually probably the most high tolerance part of the engine is probably the lifter, because I think they fit them within millionths of an inch as opposed to thousandths. So you can't really take them apart and fix them, but you can replace them. So I just got to figure out which one to replace in hopes of maybe preventing a push rod from going through the valve cover when the car's loaned out for the movie shoot to the Dukes of Hazzard wrecking crew. Screwdriver to see if I can figure out which side is clacking, and hopefully I pull the right rocker cover. It sure sounds like that side. Let me just go to the other side just to make sure. Sounds like it's coming from that side. It's really hard to tell. Tell you what, just because this side's easier to get off, we'll pull that one first and see if we can figure out if that's actually the one that's doing it. Twist and pull. It looks pretty good for not having been off for 25 years. Each one of these push rods, just a little bit of caution orange. Okay, you see it. Okay, so every one of those is pretty orange, right? Okay. So we should be able to tell if those are rotating. Here we go. Not moving. I think that's where our problem is. I got one that's not moving right there. Definitely sounds like the clack's coming from in here. This is the one that wasn't moving. Well, the one I suspect is this one right here. This one wasn't moving. Of course, this one over here doesn't look like it was moving much either. But this one for sure wasn't moving. So I think what I'll do is we'll start it up again, and I'll get my screwdriver out and I'll put it on the rocker shaft so I won't get banged in the ear. And I should be able to hear where it's knocking the loudest if it's this side. I'm not even sure it's this side. Just because you have a push rod that isn't spinning like it should. That also could mean that you got a cam load that's not in good shape. Looks like a couple of them are doing that, but we'll see. Alright, so we'll give it one more shot. The problem is if we take too long, when the engine gets warmed up, it's going to stop clacking, which is really frustrating. But anyway, let's try it again. Okay, quiet, quiet, flat, flat. That one right there. See, it just started moving. See that? We got a few of them that are a little lazy to turn, but they are turning. This one right here. I think that's the one. 1, 2, 3, fourth one in. Looks like it's an exhaust. So they're right there. You can see how this one is tight, and then this one is loose. And we just let the engine cool off just a little bit so we could touch it. Once the engine gets up to full operating temperature, my theory is that lifter loosens right up, and then it's okay. But yeah, there's no way that that doesn't have a problem. None of the rest of them will do that. So I feel pretty confident that's what the problem is. There you go. Steady as she goes. All right. And that looks pretty darn good for not having been off for over 20 years. Look down in here. Everything looks pretty clean. Not too shabby. Not bad at all. To disconnect the linkage, we're going to pull the carburetor first before we take the intake off. Just kind of keep it light and simple. This is my my homemade 4-barrel linkage that was made out of 2-barrel linkage. And I actually have a one-piece rod that was used from a B body. I actually blacksmithed it to work on an A body. People say it couldn't be done, but I did it. So I don't have the swivel setup. It's just a direct rod from up here down to the trans. Works super smooth. No slack in it, you know, because there's no other moving parts other than on here and on the transmission end. Steady, steady. We have liftoff. Distributor wrench and get the distributor loose. One of the greatest inventions ever is a distributor wrench. Gosh, it makes this so much easier. You just come in, you can feel the bolt, you come right in and loosen it. And we're gonna have to break this tab loose. And I went ahead and marked where the rotor's pointing right now with orange paint. There's a little caution orange on there. So we know which way this is going to go in. Going off of memory, I think the Chrysler just has a slot. I think the gear stays in the block. So we're only going to put it back in one way because I put a little dab of paint. So I know which way the rotor button needs to be poking. And I can't remember if these have to come out all the way. I think you have to completely remove the tab to get the distributor out on this one. You do. So there's the tab. That's the only thing that holds it down. And then once I got this loose, I should be able to come in, and they shouldn't come out too hard. It's got an O-ring that's compressed a little, but it should just lift right out. See, and there it is. See, and there's the hex. And I do have to undo my connection for the ignition box, which I can't do one-handed. Grab that. There you go. There we go. We got that out. Good deal. We also have to come in and just remove our AC bracket so we can get the intake off. It's got 3 bolts. One, 2, and we got 3 right there. I'm just gonna come in with a 9/16 and crack those loose. The razor blade. I'm going to cut it on this side because it's easier to get to. I hate to do that, but hey, if it isn't going to come off, it isn't going to come off. It's not coming off easy. These hoses are kind of hard. So that probably tore it enough, it'll probably come off. See it? There we go. I'm just going to get the radiator hose off too, same trick. Just got to use a larger socket. I think that one's a 5/16. Get that bad boy off. All right, I think we got. I think we just got 12 more fasteners to remove, and this intake comes off, and then we got access to the lifter valley. Yep, those are on there good. You know why they're on there real tight? Because your dad put them on. And I learned that from my dad. If they're really tight, they won't come off. Oh yeah. That one came loose. Good times. In here. We're just going to come down in here, and it looks like this little ear sticking out. That's a really good spot just to come in, and we're going to just break the seal on the intake. You see it's already moving. That's a good thing. Okay, it came up. Okay, we broke it loose. See that? So I'm just going to come in and reach in and grab it. Roll it over and pick it up. Of course, that hose is going to grab it anyway. There we go. Anyway, we got just a little bit of engine coolant in the engine, not a huge deal. You can see some of it beading on the cam lobes. But if you look at the lobes, you can see over here you got the best pair. These pair over here in the rear, you can see right through the block really good. The noses are shiny, but they're not rounded off or anything. All of these lobes look like they're in pretty good shape. I don't see any that look like they've been rounded or flattened. Now obviously we can't see the one with the lifter that had a problem, and that would be the one I would be most interested in looking at. But just looking at it, of course you really need to look at the nose to know if it's good or not. But when I'm thinking when I get this lifter out, I can probably see the nose through there. And we're gonna take these this rocker shaft off its pedestal so we can get this push rod out. And you can see, I'll come back around. Actually, if Austin just goes around to the front and looks at this lifter right here, you can see how much I can move the rod down into the lifter itself. You can see how much slack there is, that there really shouldn't be any. None of the other ones will do that, even the ones that are also, you know, off of the lobe, like this one right down here. This one's at the bottom part of its travel, because you can see the lobe's way over here. So this lifter's way in its bore. So you can't move these at all. They don't have any slack in them. So that's definitely a sick lifter, but it had a problem from day one, but it would only clack every once in a while. And looking over here, you can see why this thing was leaking so much oil. Look how oily this end seal gasket is. I used the cork one like they suggest for Chrysler and put sealer on it. Because now this was 25 years ago, but you can see the oil that was getting past it and sitting on top of the timing chain cover. And of course, you see how oily it is back here, and the whole back of the engine is oily. And basically it's just this end seal on this intake is oozing and just running oil all down the back of the engine and then on the front. So this is an engine that I put together. There's a little piece of crud that came off when we took the intake off. I think this engine was put together in I think it was 96 or 97. So basically it's going on 25 years, 24, 25, something like that. And it still looks as clean as the day I put it together. And this wasn't a vac cleaned block or anything. I just went in with a wire brush and cleaned all the crud out. This is an engine I hand picked out of a junkyard. I think it came out of a Chrysler Newport. Looking in the intakes, I'm looking at the valves. The valves look pretty good. They're not teetotally clean, but they're not crudded up too bad. So, yep, not too bad. So yeah, I think the only thing we're going to do, we're going to replace the bad lifter, clean this up really good, and we're going to have to put a big old towel inside this lifter valley to keep all the crud out, because we're going to make a real mess when we clean this up. Although, oh, it looks like that. Look at that. So it was like we had one gasket stay on this head, the other gasket left with the intake. It's too bad this one didn't do that. Okay, before we put this lifter into service, we got a lot of parts cleaning to do. I'm going to go ahead and take this this new Melling hydraulic lifter, and I think it's the same brand that I got when I put the engine together years ago. So there's the Chrysler new hydraulic lifter, and it should be fairly easy to push in the plunger because it's not full of oil. And we'll carefully set it down in this glass jar. We'll get it to lay down, and we'll add a little bit of heavy-duty engine oil. And the reason I use Wally World Supertech heavy-duty engine oil, well, it's probably the cheapest oil you can find with a high zinc content for these old flat tappet engines. We'll just pour a nice pool of oil in there, and we can see it bubbling. And it'll sit there and it'll bubble for a while. And we'll just we'll mark off a line so we can see how much oil it soaks up after it sits for a few hours. All right, we'll put a lid on to keep the crud out. There we go. Hey, just a quick shot of this lifter at the bottom of the jar here. You can see how that air bubble that's working its way out of the lifter. It's trying to come out. It will take several hours for this process to work its way out. Okay, back from getting supplies. It's been raining all day. We're going to test out a little gunk engine degreaser on our 25-year-old Edelbrock Performer intake. And we're going to walk it out here to our special cleaning stand. Steady. There we go. So this mobile cleaning stand has served us well. All right, 10 minutes later. That doesn't that really gunky stuff on the aluminum, if we get that off. Yeah, it's kind of. That'll come right back. Whoa. Oh yeah, it comes right off. Us and I were just talking about this intake because the engine was about 25 years ago, and it had a cast iron 383 two-barrel intake on it. The carburetor was like a 383 two-barrel style because it was the 360 two-barrel is what the engine originally was. It came out of I think a 79 Newport. And I found this intake manifold complete with Holley carburetor on eBay. And I think it was right at 20 years ago. I think I've been on eBay 20 years now. I guess it's actually been around that long. And when I got it Yeah, I put it on the car and started it up, and black smoke came pouring out of the pipes. And I scored this thing cheap. It was a deal. And it turned out that for whatever reason, the metering body on the primaries was missing the idle feed restrictors. I don't know why. And that's why the thing, you couldn't get it to idle, and it was just it looked like a diesel sitting there, just pure black smoke pouring out everywhere. So I think I ended up going on Jegs, and I bought screw-in idle feed restrictors, and I don't remember what the tap was. It was like it was a small one. It was a something -32, and it tapped it and put in. I tried a couple different pairs of idle feed restrictors and got the thing to where the thing would idle right and you know, not run stinky. And then I actually took that carburetor once it was dialed in and swapped it with my 350 Camaro, and took the 350 Camaro carb and put it on the Duster. And that's the benefit of when the only carb you work on are Holley Universal 600 CFMs. And I got them all 3 of those cars, so if I'm troubleshooting, I can just mix the carbs around, do whatever. And the carburetors performed identical on either car. So I think both of them are set up with number 70 jets, and then the idle circuit was adjusted out. Actually, I didn't have to make adjustments when I took it from the Duster to the Camaro. It idled and drove perfectly. All right, rinsing it off. We're gonna hit it with a little Adams mag wheel cleaner. See if that'll clean some of the corrosion off the aluminum. Ooh, I can smell that stuff.
Stinks.
Oh, it's strong. Yeah. And maybe it'll clean some of that crud off that just normal soap and degreaser won't get off. Woo! You know what it reminds me of?
What?
Reminds me of that smell when... Oh, I'm getting a better whiff of it now. Okay. It's not that bad.
It's a lot worse when it's not diluted.
Oh, yeah.
It's diluted 50-50.
Hopefully I didn't get too much on my thermostat. Didn't think of that. You just sprayed in there, did you?
No, it's turning purple though.
Yeah. Is it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, look at that. How long are you supposed to leave it on?
30 seconds, and then you agitate it.
Okay. Go for it. Just go in there and scrub it all up. Well, it did clean that up, didn't it? You got a lot of that off right there. That really came back nice. Yeah, that looks a little bit of all right. That came right back. Yep. It's a little bit of patina, not bad. We don't want it to look too new. That looks real good. That cleaned up nice. That's way less scrungy. That's just the right amount of patina now. That looks good. We're trying to use the least aggressive way to clean these mating surfaces on the aluminum intake. We're just taking a little house sponge with the scrubby side. We're putting a little mineral spirits on it, essentially paint thinner, and it's just melting that stuff right off. That way you don't have to like hit it with a scraper and worry about gouging the soft aluminum surface. And maybe last step, we got a few places where some corrosion, I think, it had attached itself on one of the crossovers. And we'll just take a little bit of fine grit paper, probably like 400, and we'll clean that up a little bit. It's not going to take much. One of these was rusted up a little bit. There was some rust that fused, oh yeah, on this side right here. And who knows, that pad may take that off. There was just a little bit of rust from the iron head, and the steel gasket kind of fused itself onto the aluminum. We'll just get most of that polished off as we can. And we're going to get where the end seals go, we'll get that cleaned up really good. We'll get a nice clean surface to put our new gaskets on. Hopefully we won't have any oil leaks when we get her back together. That aluminum really cleaned up nicely. Looks factory. Oh yeah. Little mineral spirits and an old kitchen scrubby sponge, whatever you call that surface on the back. I don't remember what you call that. It's kind of like Scotch-Brite, but not as aggressive. I'm going to get in here and scrape these gaskets off. We still got one stuck to the head on the passenger side. We got these in-seal gaskets for the intake. We're going to get that all scraped off. You can see just how done those in-seal gaskets were. You can just see the oil ooze out when you press on it. So it was leaking, and it also looks like it had been leaking on the crossover for a while. That looks kind of rusty. The seal there looks like okay-ish. Looks like there's a little spot there that's maybe not sealing like it should have been. Right in there, you can see where it's rusty. And I think that's where a lot of the staining came from, where the coolant was leaking out through here and then dripping down here and running down the timing chain cover and staining it. You can see some other staining here. And I know it did have one of the bypass hose was leaking also at one time. I know that stained it a little bit too, but we'll just go ahead and we'll just kind of dye this engine block back to Chrysler blue again. Hopefully tomorrow we'll get this thing buttoned up. We'll actually have it running again. Yep, it was loose on the edge, but other than that, really, not too bad. It's still stuck on pretty good. And see a little pop right up. Yep. That was actually still glued on pretty good right there. This one not so good. You can see it failed. Looks like that was leaking for a while. Car was running fine, but you can definitely see the oil from the lifter valley was making it past this intake seal and probably sucking it down the ports a little bit. Hey, just another close-up here. You can see how poorly this gasket was sealing. Didn't look like it was doing a very good job down here at the bottom. Especially right in here, on these front two intake ports. Yeah, they look a little oily, and the ones in the back, they look a little less oily. Maybe not by much. Yeah, I bet it was sucking a little oil in there. That doesn't look so great either. Yeah, water crossover looks like it was fairly tight on that side, not too bad. Yeah, it looks pretty good in there. I'm going to come in with a little sandpaper. We'll clean this up a little bit. We'll just face it. I got in there and wiped the engine block down with a little bit of mineral spirits. Got that block good and clean, as degreased as I can. And I'm just going to go in there and just give it just a little dusting of Chrysler blue just to kind of revive it, since we already kind of got it apart. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Just put a little bit of lipstick on her and this old Mopar just comes right back. So I wasn't quite sure what to do with the intake manifold gaskets. The first thing I did was I ordered the one in the center, the MS90109, because that was the same gasket that I put on it 20 plus years ago. And as you can see, it looks like it had some sealing issues, although I don't know if you can blame that more on time or just product misapplication. I've always been inclined to use a fiber-based gasket like this Mr. Gasket one here, 6840. There's no steel sandwich inside it. It's not steel reinforced. It's just your basic fiber gasket. It looks like it's got a Printo seal on it. And this one comes with the O-ring for the distributor and also the gasket for the distributor base. The other thing you notice is it doesn't have a cutout in it for the exhaust crossover. And what I plan on doing is I'm going to block the exhaust crossover, and I'll show you how I do that. Same deal with this Felpro one. It comes with the crossover, and it's a 1213S-3, and it also blocks the heat. But this is a steel shim type gasket, and it does have a Printo seal type dealio going around it. Probably would be a better choice to use, if I was going to go Felpro, I'd probably want to use this as opposed to the 109. I think I probably would have less sealing issues if I'm going to go Felpro. I'm leaning towards just using the fiber gasket. I think that's probably a safer way to go since I'm mounting an aluminum intake. If I was doing a cast iron intake, I'm not sure it would make a whole lot of difference either way. But feel free to, okay, well, I'll spin this around so you guys can see the part numbers. So we got, what, Mr. Gasket, is that 5840? The MS90109, that's just your standard Felpro. I think they call that a Permatorque gasket. And I think this one is called like the, I don't know, Printo-Seal gasket or whatever that is, their newest technology, and they call it a performance gasket. Feel free to leave something in the comment box. I'd love to know what you guys are using before I go ahead and do this. And I think we'll go ahead and wrap this video up, and we'll call this part 1.